Hello, guys. I'm Barbara,
And I'm Colleen
and welcome back to yet another episode.
of today's Matter of Consequence.
And today we'll be covering direct action. So I feel like we should begin by
Storytelling?
I was gonna say defining direct
Okay.
action for those that do not know what it is. So, my definition or my perception of direct action is predominantly non-violent, however it can be, form of protesting that directly essentially blocks something from happening or prevents something. So for example, environmental activists blocking coal mines to protest the climate crisis, that is direct action.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's definitely about ensuring something doesn't happen or will not happen. And I don't know, I don't think, it doesn't have to be violent, but
Yeah.
it can get violent.
And not just ensuring something doesn't happen, but maybe causing an, I would say, inconvenience for the neoliberal society in order to ensure that certain people get what they want / need. But most importantly, it's direct.
Yeah, that's the key point. It's not just advocacy or I guess indirect support, which is often seen in school settings where you'd have an event and it counts as a charity or something like that or a donation. It's not those kinds of things. It's direct action as in you go there and you interact and you ensure that you cater to what their demands are, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So, with direct action, there's this ongoing conversation, whether it is good or bad, and I feel like we really want to sway away from establishing this good or bad binary.
Definitely.
Because there is something good and something bad about almost everything. And well, this is my opinion. Everyone has the right to protest.
Yeah.
And direct action is, in most cases, it is a human right that I will not deny anyone, not even anti-vaxxers. But historically, direct action has been used by many marginalized communities to gain rights, which Stonewall, that was direct action. It was a riot. Black Lives Matter protests, the 3% that did turn into riots, and even the protests themselves, that was direct action, and I support that because usually with especially in Western societies, your demands will not be met unless you do something big.
Yeah.
And that, of course, I'm talking about people demanding human rights. I am not talking about crazy alt-right people just walking around with guns. Although I do believe it is their right, I don't support that kind of direct action. And yeah, but essentially, why many people view direct action as something bad.
Yeah.
Particularly centrists, center left, center right, very
More business.
business
Yeah.
someone who would major in business. Think that just did I lie?
Okay.
These are just my opinions, guys.
Yes. This is a discussion. It's not.
Yes, these are not absolute statements in any way, shape, or form. But I feel like these people, it's usually people who very much benefit from the status quo.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that they don't directly support certain causes. However, they're not very
They're not actively trying to do anything about it
and
either.
That too, but they also maybe sometimes lack a nuanced understanding of certain forms of oppression, and they just do not support, because they view direct action as a disturbance.
Yeah.
And they do view it as a negative disturbance to their perception of modern liberal society, which, because many of them are radical optimists in my opinion, people who oppose direct action, who are center left, and it's because they think that things are the best they have ever been. So we don't need radical change like this.
Yeah. And then we kind of had like a couple examples, I guess,
Yeah.
that we could talk about, and kind of what kicked off this discussion between us.
Yeah, so basically, this happened in my hometown, Bratislava, I think a couple days ago. Essentially, a couple people spray painted a couple churches in, like, the old town, like, the historic part, with slogans such as God is trans, the queer liberation or revolution is coming, and many people were outraged, and of course, it was, like, you had your, like, traditional alt-right, homophobic, transphobic people who are ha, look, it's the gays ruining everything.
As always.
As always, it's always the gays. But then you also had like liberal, like essentially just neo-libs, like the type of people I just described, and they were like, oh my god, we can't believe that like a couple like hooligans is ruining like the reputation of the LGBTQ plus community in Slovakia, while completely failing to recognize that queer folk can't just like sit around and wait for like the state to help them in certain instances,
Yeah.
especially like not in Slovakia because it's not happening because we're currently pushing like anti-transition laws. We don't even recognize gay marriage. We have like the partnership,
Civil.
civil partnership,
Yeah.
like we recognize that but barely. It is very difficult for like trans people to get recognized. You have to go through like several stages of like therapy so they can actually diagnose you with like
Diagnose you?
yeah, with like body dysmorphia
Okay.
and gender dysmorphia. And so like it's clearly not going the right way. So I feel like them like seeing this as like a horrible act of disobedience is just like you say you're pro gay, you say you're pro trans, but then you don't do anything to help those people. But what really outraged me personally, this is like very niche to where I'm from, but there's this like this page. It's called like Rainbows whatever, and it's run by a cis het man, and he's literally what I described to the T. He's just like, oh my god, a disturbance in the modern liberal society. We can't stand for this. But he run this page and he advertises it as a page for queer people, which is really interesting because he's not queer. And then he made this post being the LGBTQ plus community condemns these actions of vandalism, and this is like the definition of like stepping on like people, and especially like on marginalized voices and silencing them. And it just really shows that he doesn't have an understanding of what oppression looks like. It's like this is like the type of direct action I support because it is clearly making a statement which otherwise would not have been heard if it wasn't done in any other way. Thoughts?
I personally, so I do think direct action is important, and for me it really depends case by case. So I don't know everything about what happened, but there's that whole thing because where I come from, like vandalism on a religious site is like completely illegal and you will get punished.
Same in Slovakia.
Yeah. So like you can go to prison for those kinds of things. So obviously it's not, I don't want to say it was wrong in that aspect, but at the same time it was understandable because there's no other way they're going to be heard.
I feel like something I should also mention is that although Slovakia is technically a secular state,
Yes.
The church still like does hold. They yield a lot of power, especially with like many of the prominent politicians being quite religious, which obviously there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
However, implementing your religion and policing other people based on your beliefs,
That's when
That's
it
when
becomes less secular.
yeah, that's when it becomes less secular, and it's just like in my opinion, it was very like thought out with the churches because like it's essentially people usually cite like religion
Mm-mm-mm.
as a means of like oppressing people.
So we also kind of touched on Black Lives Matter and the whole, how that counted as direct action. So
Yeah, I
do you
mean
want to
like
go into that again, or?
these are just my unfiltered opinions. But for me, like, oh, I should preface this by saying I'm white and I'm not American. However, from what I've gathered from like researching the oppression of African Americans, and like what like the protests and like some of the riots, because the riots, I think there was like a few of the protests that did turn into riots, but I can completely understand that, because they did not it did not start with like the protesters were very like peaceful,
Yeah.
and then in exchange for that they got attacked by the police. And I can completely understand how like
Someone would get
yeah,
quite angry because they're exercising their right to
first of all they're
protest.
exercising their right, and they're protesting for like their lives. And it's just like
And then they're getting attacked for it by authorities who are supposed to be protecting the people.
yeah. But also, like, in the case of these protests, like, these authorities, like, the history behind police forces in America is not very pretty. Um, I mean, you should definitely research more about this on your own. But initially, they were, like, started, it was just white supremacists who, because when the 13th Amendment was, like, written in and black people were no longer slaves, there was that loophole unless you were in prison. So like very like severe police forces were established to make sure as many black people could be in prison as possible, because that still counted as slave labor. And these origins of like police forces, the police force in the U.S. definitely played a key part in the Black Lives Matter protest.
Yeah.
I am ignoring so much of the nuance of this topic. Please research on your own. We'll link some articles and resources in the description below.
As always.
As always, yeah.
So there's Black Lives Matter, and there's also kind of talking about direct action in relation to women's rights, and this is again in the U.S. specifically. There's a lot of information about this online as well, but white women got the right to vote in like 1920, 1919, around there. In the U.S., I think it was 1920 because it was like, you know, new decade and
Roaring 20s.
yeah, all that stuff. And of course, this is only for white women, but they didn't get their right to vote just that easily. Like, oh yeah, I'd like my right to vote. And they're like, okay, like they had to fight for a really long time. They had to, there were a lot of discussions. And a lot of female activists that we learn about in history classes were actually lobbyists more than they were like direct action and everything. So of course lobbying can technically count as direct action, but I think some of the things that really pushed for women's rights is like the women who chained themselves like in front of the White House, who really wanted their message to be on the front page of every newspaper, and also the women who went to vote even though they technically weren't allowed to, and then we weren't sure which votes to count and which ones not to count because who knew who they had voted for and everything. So it was those types of incidents, I say in quotations, that eventually led to, I guess, people being annoyed enough about it or aware enough about it to actually say, okay, maybe it is time for women to have the right to vote.
Because unfortunately, there are certain systems of oppression in place, even within contemporary society, that many people benefit from. And these people do not want to change it, and some people benefit from it without even knowing.
Yeah.
And they just live in comfort and everything's good. And these issues aren't really something that they worry about or that they are aware of. And, well, first of all, direct action will get you press coverage. But also, when you just while discussions are incredibly important to all of this, the disturbance of, like, I'm going to keep saying this phrase, the disturbance of a modern liberal society is something that can actually like instill change. Because people are like, our perfect, in quotations of course, world is being like disturbed. Let's see what this is about. And whether the change comes from merely wanting to like appease the protesters,
Yeah.
or whether it's because they genuinely do realize that like we
There's
need
an
change.
issue. Yeah.
The change still can be accomplished, and that's where like direct action, in my opinion, plays a very important role. Moving on from human rights,
There's also
the
environmental
climate
rights.
crisis.
So this
Woo!
is probably today, like in 2021, this might be one of the types of direct action that we see on the news the most. I feel like because there's a lot of stuff that a lot of organizations and individuals do all the time. So
It's also like I would say it's slightly easier, not easier, but there's like more things that you can do directly to like combat the climate crisis. Like I've heard about people like barricading coal mines.
Yeah.
And then Greenpeace does a lot of stuff.
Greenpeace always does their little I don't know how to call it, like their projects, I guess, where they go and I guess disturb like the cruises, the ships, and all those kinds of things to ensure that their message is heard. And there's also Greta, who, according to some people, she pulls children out of school on Fridays to go protest, but really it's direct action because they're protesting in the streets and they're missing school for it because it's a matter that they think is urgent and that they care about, and their message is, what's the point of going to school if
there's not going to be any school in like 20 years.
Yeah. So
although we should definitely highlight that like especially, I mean, all direct action must be very well researched, like before doing it, because there were some individuals, some Pokemons, like that lady who burned.
We learned about a lady who decided to, she was an environmentalist. She wanted more change for the environment, and ski stations are not good for the environment in any way, shape, or form. They're just for human entertainment, and I guess she got really angry about it, and she decided to burn down the station. And that obviously came at a huge cost because there were people.
Yeah.
And that it doesn't...
It was also in a forest.
Yeah, and it was also in a forest. And of course, there's a cost that comes with every type of action that you do. But it shouldn't go as far as to endangering people's lives when they're not aware about it.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful.
But I mean, I can completely understand like the sides for both.
Yeah.
Like I can understand why like she would want to do it. It's a very like it can become very nuanced, like with the environment, and like I see myself as like someone who cares about the environment, but not when it like comes with like human costs. Maybe?
Yeah.
But it's very complicated. Like I'm still, like it's very hard to make like a. There are no absolutes, definitely, because as Colleen said, everything does come with a cost, and like then I guess it goes like back to your personal values and like what you value most.
There was another story with Greenpeace. Is I think this was a really long time ago, but it like kind of broke the news in France. Like what happened was that there was like some sort of like nuclear testing or something like in the sea somewhere, and of course Greenpeace was not just going to let that slide because it destroys so many ecosystems and parts of nature that need protecting. And so there was the military like ship. I don't know any military terms or for like technology or anything. So
it was like a base or a submarine.
It's like a ship. I don't know.
Oh, it's a ship. Okay, whatever. Some military entity.
Yeah, there we go. In the sea, out in the ocean, and Greenpeace was planning on not like making it explode, making it sink, but not in a way that would like
kill people.
And they planned it very carefully so that they would go in, place everything into the ship when no one was there, and it was all planned out. But then on the military side of things, it was not planned out. So I think it was while the ship was sinking or right before it started to sink, a French military man ended up finding himself on the boat, and he lost his life because of that. And it kind of, I think that was kind of one of the reasons why in France, like, there's a very, I don't know, controversial view of not only of Greenpeace, but kind of like environmental action in general.
Yeah.
Because some people blame organizing on the military side. Some people say you shouldn't have exploded it in the first place.
While I do understand that, like, that man unfortunately did lose his life, and it was very tragic. I mean, of course, I'm sure if I was related to him, if I knew him, it would be maybe a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
But I don't want to insert my emotions into, like, my morals in a way in this instance, or, like, in, like, this sphere of things in general. And unfortunately, I feel like there would be no other way of, like, preventing that nuclear test from happening. Because no matter how much you, like, protest, like, the military at the end of the day yields a lot more power. The government yields a lot more power. And maybe this was the only way of stopping it.
So, yeah, there's always...
But it's not black and white.
Yeah, exactly. It's... Nowhere is it black and white. Everything is just gray, honestly. You kind of just have to figure it out. It's case by case, and everything, there's always, like, a cost, but there's always a benefit as well. You just have to be really careful about it and...
Form your own opinion. Yeah. Especially, like, in the environment. Like, for example, for me personally, this is definitely, like, my bias. Yeah. But with, like, the spray-painted churches, as someone who's obviously not obviously, that was such a condescending term, who's not religious and who is a part of the LGBTQ plus community and who is, like, quote-unquote radical, like, I view that as a step in the right direction. Or, like, I view it as something necessary. But, yeah. And I feel like it is time to transition into some bad direct action. Well, in my
in her opinion, bad direct action. It's up to you.
Okay, no. It's up to you, but I can make a compelling argument as to why it is bad.
Yeah, okay, there we go.
And then we can also, like, juxtapose the response from the authorities.
Yes.
Because I feel like that's a very interesting thing that we should definitely delve into.
Definitely.
So, my favorite example of horrid, disgusting direct action is, well, this is also from back home. This also happened, like, a week ago, I believe. And a bunch of anti-vaxxers and anti-maskers as well blocked the road right, like, by, like, the presidential palace. And they were just protesting while blocking traffic, and they were like, we're not going to wear masks and we're not going to get the vaccine. And my argument as to why this is bad is because it's a health hazard. Because it's
a safety hazard.
It's a genuine safety hazard. Because I don't care that you're blocking the traffic, whatever.
That's part of protesting.
That's part of protesting. Go for it. But the fact that you're gathering in very large groups while
pandemic is still going on.
Well, pandemic is happening, and assumingly none of the people present are vaccinated and none of them are wearing masks, because that is what they're protesting, because it is their right. It is your right to do so. But it is also our right to respond, especially since you're endangering people.
Yeah.
I hate when people draw a parallel between, like, people protesting for their human rights and like, people who are protesting to, like, not wear masks, because
here's the difference, though. Like, if you're protesting for your life, it's because you're in danger, and there are other people around you, loved ones or whoever, that you care about, your community that you care about, and that they're in genuine danger. They don't have human rights, they're not being respected, or there's a lot of different issues, and those have, like, life-changing impacts. Those,
and I this is definitely our bias, but morally, we view this type of direct action as completely just. At least I do. I think you do too. I'm not putting words in your mouth.
Protesting, I think, is a right, and it's something that, you know, anyone can do. But when you're putting a lot of other people in danger, for example, the blocking the road, I don't think that's an issue.
Like, but the fact that you're, like, in a large group
during a pandemic, unvaccinated, not wearing masks, and one of the things that people say the most about, like, getting vaccinated is like, sure, maybe you're not scared of getting COVID, but what about everyone around you?
Yeah.
It's not just for yourself, it's for everyone.
Yeah.
And so when you do that, you're putting a lot of other people in danger, and that's when it kind of crosses a line.
Yeah, because essentially you're bargaining to have a right to endanger everyone around you.
And
that is not a right. That kind of word
that
is,
I think endangering people around you is a crime.
Yeah.
So that's when I kind of like, I'm like, it gets a really iffy for me, because I'm like, yeah, but you're putting other people in danger. That's not really the goal here.
Yeah.
So there's that.
This is what I meant by bad direct action.
So
for a bad cause, not bad per se, but just for a bad cause.
Yeah, because the method itself.
The method itself is completely fine. Go for it. Block a road.
But it's when.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that part is a little iffy, and
another. I don't know if we can even count this as direct action. I feel like it started off as direct action, but then it just became a riot, like full on like riot, and that is of course when the Capitol Hill was stormed.
Oh yeah.
That is technically a form of direct action. Once again, I believe that is. I'm not saying it's bad per se, because I could see like someone like yes, legally it is bad, but of course like I could see this like storming a governmental building. I could see it's like a feasible.
It's something that, okay, here's the thing. Storming a political building or a government building is something that could happen anywhere. Right? It's not like...
Yeah.
So, that's the thing. It's more, I guess, the message? Or...
The message, once again. And also how, like, they treated, like, the people who were present in the building. And these people, like, stormed in with, like, guns.
Again, that's endangering people's lives.
That is just slightly terrifying. But I wanted to bring up this example to talk about the response from the authorities. Because, and both of these, like, quote-unquote bad examples or, like, bad causes, like, the response from the authorities was not as severe as you would expect it to be.
Yeah.
Because, like, imagine if it was, like, Black Lives Matter protesters storming the Capitol.
Then there would definitely be,
like, deaths.
Tear gas and... Yeah.
Probably, because, like, think about the fact that there were deaths and tear gas at, like, peaceful protests.
Yeah, so it's the difference that kind of makes you question everything, and that's on the side of the U.S.
Definitely.
In France, in Europe, I think, in general, or in the EU zone, I guess. I don't really know what goes on in the other places, but most of the time, protesting, they won't really bother you unless it turns into violence, when you're, like, burning down stores or, like, breaking into places.
Yeah, so looting.
Yeah,
yes.
So that's when the authorities will usually, like, get heavily involved.
But also, generally, I feel like the way environmental direct action in particular is portrayed in the media is very much like negative, in a very negative light.
It's like...
Yeah, but, I mean, this is very specific to Slovakia, but I've noticed that, like, the authorities don't really do anything when, like, anti-vaxxers, like, start, like, meeting up.
Yeah.
Or, like, start protesting, and yes, it is their right to protest, but also they're putting people in danger. And I feel like that's something that the authorities, because it's technically, I know it's a law in Slovakia that, like, if you're purposely putting other people in danger, particularly when it comes to, like disease and stuff like that can be a criminal offense. Mm-hmm. And usually no one does anything about it. But when, like, let's say, like, mines are blocked, all of a sudden, like, everyone's there, you get arrested, you get fined, but these people don't face any real consequences.
Yeah. Speaking of, like, kind of your right to have, like, meet up and do discussions and those kinds of things. So I used to live in Switzerland, neutral country.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff happens. And so, for example, Greta was there, and our school very clearly told us, like, it's your right as a student and as a citizen, I guess, of this whole entire planet to go and protest if you think it's in danger. So we will not penalize you if you decide to go protest on
That's
Fridays.
really cool.
So that was great. And I'm really glad that there's that aspect of like, okay, we respect like your decision to do that. But being in a neutral country means that there's the opposite can also kind of happen. So
Yeah.
Switzerland is the host of a lot of neo-Nazi meetings. So
Oh.
there's that too. Like being being a neutral country comes with both things. It's not just one way. So it's again that kind of idea of like it depends on the message you're sending out.
I guess
and
that highlights like we've talked about this at school. Well, not at school in like in an academic setting, but more so like among ourselves. And because our school, this can definitely be a good thing, but our school definitely preaches like every opinion matters, every opinion is valid. And I feel like that is good when like attempting to like amplify marginalized voices. However, that also like gives room to people who are just spreading misinformation or like hatred.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's very important, even for Switzerland as a country. Supreme Leader Barbora, democracy is not a real thing.
Okay.
Sometimes it is very important to take a stance on issues. Yeah.
I think, personally, I don't know. Personally, I think it's important to take a stance on issues and
Like, there are some issues that shouldn't be a debate.
there are some issues that shouldn't be a debate, and there are some issues that are a debate, and like, sure, maybe from my side of things, your opinion or your perspective is wrong, and obviously I'll try what I can to try and convince you otherwise. Like, they're going to do the same thing to me.
Yeah.
It's not like they're going to be like, oh, okay.
Like, I feel like you can argue about, like, different, like, maybe, like, certain aspects of, like, political systems or, like, what is the best, like, tax policy, whatever. You could, like, that could be opinions,
that I
but
can
human
understand.
Rights aren't opinions.
Human rights are not an opinion because they're human rights.
And also the climate crisis should not be an opinion.
I don't think whether the climate crisis exists
That
should be a debate, because it's...
Like, what can we do to, like, mitigate it?
that I can understand as a debate.
Technocentrism versus deep ecologists.
Because
yes,
that's a discussion. That's
Yes.
something that we want, like, the best possible solution.
Yes.
But
It's
does climate change exist? That doesn't
obviously
lead us anywhere.
not. You can quote me. No, I'm kidding.
That
I'm
doesn't
kidding.
lead us anywhere. That just kind
Exactly.
of brings us back to the first step, like step
square
1,
zero.
which started, by the way, like 200 years ago.
Yeah.
So we're not really going anywhere.
Also, transitioning into school, I feel like this is like maybe direct action in like in a school setting. Do you think that's feasible?
Personally, okay, it depends, obviously.
But then let's think. I guess our school, because we're both here, it's like it's like a good starting point.
Yeah.
Do you think direct action in our school is possible?
It depends what the issue is, obviously. So, Amnesty Club.
Ooh.
Amnesty Club. So, as a part of Amnesty Club, of course we'd like to do direct action, but because of circumstances that are beyond our control, we've kept to mainly being about education and advocacy, because we think that's also just really important, because we don't want to, spread information that just isn't correct. Yeah, so that's our main goal for now. I think direct action is possible in our school in the way that if it's something that we want to change about our school specifically. So yeah, then I think it's possible.
But then imagine how much, like, what the consequences would
there will be severe consequences.
Even if you're like, okay, so this is something that we discussed in GSA, because a while ago, there was this GSA poster that someone wrote a slur on, and...
It was vandalized.
Yeah, it was vandalized, but, like, it wasn't vandalism that would, like, bring about anything positive. It was...
Yeah, it wasn't hearts and rainbows.
It was a hate crime.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, yeah.
It was, so...
Oh, why am I laughing? Anyway, so we actually did have this discussion during a club meeting where, like, the administration is not really doing anything. So, because, like, we obviously didn't expect them to, like, catch the person because it did happen in a bathroom, and that is very difficult.
And there's no cameras in a bathroom.
that we know of. I'm kidding. No, that's illegal.
For legal purposes and for school
For
purposes.
my own sake, I don't want anyone, like...
That was purely a joke.
Yes, that was very much a joke. But anyway, no one put out a statement condemning these actions. It was all kind of like buried.
Yeah.
And we did meet with them multiple times, being like, hey, could we have a statement? Could you condemn this? Like we can even like talk to you about like what you could like put there,
Yeah.
because like this is not a valid opinion and you should really discuss this because this is an issue within this school. This is what like the queer youth in your school is telling you, and they didn't do anything. And at one point there was a discussion about like doing a walkout, and then we kind of forgot about it. The school was ending. We all had exams. We all had stuff to do.
Okay.
But we did think about it, but then we're like, would it be worth it? Because
Because it obviously comes with consequences. They're
first
not
of all,
just gonna let it slide.
yeah, especially like within like your like last 2 years of high school, you do not want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
Because then like goodbye college admission.
So that's when there's like that debate like between not necessarily doing what's right, because it's your own opinion, like you do what you do what you have to do, but kind of an internal debate, I guess, about like a lot depends on your last 2 years at school. You get suspended, a lot of doors like just shut immediately.
Yeah, definitely.
So there's that. There's a cost again. There's a cost.
Huge cost, and I also feel like it would not be received in a way like oh, these people really just want like a statement from the school. Like these people just like want something to be done about this. It would be like, evil gays at it again.
So there's that. I don't know. Personally, I haven't been in that situation, obviously, but I don't know. I think if someone were to do it and they were to like face consequences for doing a walkout or whatever, I'd kind of push the argument like, how come I can face consequences for speaking my mind, while these people are like deliberately offending, and using words that obviously cause great offense and not face any consequences, or at least like, how is everyone in the school going to know that I got into trouble for speaking my mind, but then no one's going to know about why? Or, like, the root of the problem? Because that just paints you as the bad guy.
Yeah, definitely.
So, there's all of that. And I guess...
It's really complicated. Like, you have your internal, like...
Your own debate that you have to think about, because...
Yeah.
Cause it won't be easy, obviously.
Like, because as much as I care about this, do I really want to sacrifice my, like... Potentially sacrifice my future...
Or at least the next, like...
For one apology.
Yeah.
Or, like, one statement.
And that's the thing. It also depends, like, how many times does it happen, I want to say?
Yeah.
Like, because I feel like if it happens several times, that's when it kind of... It's already crossed a line, but then that's just, like, rubbing it in. And it's like, okay.
Do I really want to get suspended 6 times? Yeah.
So, there's that. And honestly, it's really up to... the group or the individual to decide what they think is best, depending on the circumstances and the situation.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it also depends on the institution, I guess, that you're in.
Yeah, so that pretty much, I think, wraps this episode up. I guess the main takeaways are many of these issues are nuanced, definitely not black and white. Do your own research. I guess...
Understand the consequences as well of what's going to happen.
Cost benefit. Ew.
Cost benefit.
Sorry, that's econ.
Yes.
I'm not very proud of that one. But yeah, just recognize that these are very complex issues.
And it's not just an outright, like, direct action is bad, direct action is good. It really depends.
I'm a huge proponent of direct action in general, but of course there may be exceptions. Some of them are case-to-case basis. Really analyzing because in my opinion, the consequences are a lot more important than like the intention.
Yeah.
For example, with that lady burning down that ski lift. Yeah, but yeah, just try and like think about your morals, your values. Uh, Although your emotions do form your biases, try and separate those two in certain instances, just to get a better understanding.
Yeah.
Have discussions, and do your research. Yeah. Thank you so much for listening.
And make sure to tune in next time.
Definitely.